Welcome to Food Friends, a podcast inspiring home cooks to try new dishes in the kitchen by sharing trusted recipes, tips, and friendship. Hi, I'm Sonia.
And I'm Carrie. We met in Los Angeles over 15 years ago as personal chefs and haven't stopped talking about food since. We're so glad you're here. Thanks for being our food friend.
If you enjoyed our podcast, please subscribe, leave us a review, and share this episode with friends. We love hearing from you, so follow us on Instagram or drop us a line at foodfriendspodcast.com.
Yes, we'd love to hear from you and your food friends. Happy cooking and eating. Hi, Sonia.
Hi, Carrie.
Sonia, what was your best bite this week?
My best bite was blueberry muffins.
Ooh,
so
what a fun turn.
Right? I feel like a while back we talked about the Alison Roman blueberry muffin recipe, and I hadn't made it in a while.
I will say my friend Maylin makes blueberry muffins only for Christmas Day.
Oh,
and
cute.
So it always makes me think of her too, because her daughter associates Christmas Day with blueberry muffins.
I think blueberry muffins are a really good winter bake because you could bake them with frozen blueberries or fresh. Yeah. And obviously blueberries, they sell them year round, but I actually think they're almost better with frozen blueberries. They're really easy to bake, and you kind of want those fruity, comforting flavors. It just makes winter feel a little less wintry when you have them around.
Yeah, I completely agree. And they're great because they also freeze really well too. You can bake them and then eat a couple or eat half and then freeze the rest. I think it might have been for our road trip.
Yes, it was road trip food. Yes.
Blueberry muffins for a road trip, which makes your road trip a little bit brighter. So if you're heading to the mountains to go skiing.
That's such a good point.
It's a great idea.
So this recipe comes from Alison Roman, as I mentioned. I think it's really simple. There are a few things that I think are a little different than some of the other recipes out there. I found that they were not too sweet. They were really balanced, which I think is really nice for a muffin, especially if you're planning to eat it for breakfast. Like, you don't want a sugar bomb.
You don't want it to be so sweet, yeah.
So they really weren't too sweet. She does some things that are really smart. For one, you preheat your oven to 425, and that's what you bake at. And I don't think we often bake goods at high temperatures. For a second, I double taked. I was like, does she mean 425? She does mean 425. It really works. Is that what you normally bake your muffins at?
You know, I don't know that I ever paid that close of attention. I'm not much of a muffin baker. When I do, I'm not really paying. I'm just following the recipe.
I don't know why it surprised me, but it did. Maybe because I hadn't made muffins in a minute or two. And, I used parchment liners. You can spray just your tin if you want. And then you're whisking together flour, baking powder, salt, and baking soda. You set that aside. The wet ingredients is where I think she has something important. She has you use either buttermilk or thinned yogurt. I've done both in the past. This time I didn't have buttermilk. So I just took a little yogurt. I thinned it out. Like she said, just add a little water till it was like buttermilk consistency. Yeah. I added a tiny squeeze of lemon too, just for that extra little bit of acidity. You whisk together light brown sugar. I do think brown sugar matters too in baked goods like this. It creates a kind of, I'm sorry, the M word, moist texture to the bake.
And I think it has more depth of flavor.
Totally.
I like that caramely flavor always.
Yeah.
I prefer that to just straight up white sugar.
Yeah, and she does combine it with a little bit of white sugar. So it's brown sugar and white sugar, eggs, buttermilk, or the thinned out yogurt, a little melted butter. That adds such a nice richness. But you could also actually swap it for neutral oil if you had to. Right. You could also add in a little grated lemon zest. She does recommend that. If you like lemon, add it in. And then you just combine the two together. And she gives you a very clear directive, which is a few bits of visible flour are okay, because you want to be gentle. You really don't want to overmix your muffin batter. And I think that's an important tip in the recipe.
I think that's an important reminder to anyone when they're baking something like a muffin. And I also wonder if all that high heat is actually what helps them really
It puffs up.
And they puff up, yeah.
They puff up real nice. After you leave your little bits of floury batter you don't overmix, then you add the blueberries. You fold them in gently. And so that kind of will do the rest of the mixing for you. But she also tells you, and this I think is another nice touch, to keep a few of the blueberries out of the batter. Once you fill your muffin tins 3/4 of the way high, then you top them with a few of those extra berries, and that visually just looks really nice.
That's such a smart tip from a cook who's really paying attention. And listen, if you don't do that step, it's not going to really make a big difference on the taste. But especially if you're sharing with them with someone, it'll just be so obvious that it's a blueberry muffin. It'll be beautiful because sometimes the blueberries will sink to the bottom.
I feel like it's a real pastry chef tip. She has a pastry background. It's like what you do with a chocolate chip cookie. You set some of the chips or chocolate
Oh,
chunks, in
yeah.
my case, aside, and you top them and they stay on top. For her to do that with the muffin, I think is very smart too. The other smart thing she has you do is sprinkle them just with regular old sugar at the end. So like once you fill the cups and top them with blueberries, then you sprinkle sugar on top. And she has you use just regular sugar, not turbinado. Turbinado is raw sugar.
It's a bigger crystal.
Yeah, and it has some more texture. But what I liked about using just the regular old white sugar is it creates these little white sparkly tops, and it's like a very thin, delicate crust. And there was something about that with the muffin that was really nice. I think you could use either, whatever floats your boat, but it was just a nice touch. They bake for 17 to 20 minutes, so super fast. You cool them on the rack. It's very hard to let them cool. You want to eat them immediately. It just makes your whole house smell so good. And then it's just the most fun thing to give to someone. I mean, I just don't think, I personally don't eat like 12 muffins in a couple days. So if I'm making 12 muffins at once, I want to give a few to my neighbor or my friends or stick them in the freezer.
You're spreading that sweetness around to the people that you care about. Receiving a homemade treat like that, making a homemade treat, I think is really fun. And to your point, it adds this beautiful aroma to your kitchen. It's like a nice little gift to yourself in the winter months. But the idea of also sharing it with other people is kind of the best.
Because who doesn't like a blueberry muffin?
If you don't like a blueberry muffin, I'm not sure I want to be friends with you.
All right, I'm sorry to all the anti-blueberry people. We still love you. Actually, I think
we still love you.
I think I have a friend who hates blueberry muffins, but
really,
I do. I think because
what's not to
well,
love?
she doesn't like the flavor of cooked blueberries, and
okay, fair enough.
I think it's fair enough. I think some people don't like that flavor.
You still love me, and I don't like beets, and that's kind of your favorite vegetable on the planet. So
I still love my husband, and he doesn't really like fish or mayonnaise or mustard.
We all have our things.
I'm very accepting of people's preferences. I really think we have to be. But I do think that if you don't like blueberries, but you still want to try this muffin recipe, I think you could sub in blackberries, raspberries.
I think blackberries or raspberries would be great. And I always keep frozen raspberries in my freezer for smoothies. And so I would use a frozen raspberry too.
Yeah. What's so nice about any kind of muffin is that it really works with frozen fruit, which I think is just such a nice thing, especially in the winter when there isn't that much great fresh fruit around.
I love that this was your best bite. One last question though. Who did you give your blueberry muffins to?
I gave them to my client's daughter because she really loves blueberry muffins. And so she was thrilled.
Oh, that's so nice.
Carrie, what was your best bite of the week?
Sonia, my best bite of the week was also a baked good. I made Italian ricotta cookies, which are very similar to what our friend Sam made, these lemon ricotta cookies.
So Sam, when we were talking about holiday cookies, and I knew she makes holiday cookies, I asked her, like, what is the cookie you have to make every year? And she said lemon ricotta cookies, which I just am obsessed with. So I am so excited that you tried a version of this recipe. It's not the same one that Sam makes, right?
It's not the same one that Sam makes, but I think they're very similar. I was using the New York Times app. I was just kind of looking for a cookie to make and take to a friend's house. We were going to a gathering and I wanted to make a lot of cookies. I think in my mind, I was thinking about Sam, like that she made these ricotta cookies. So really what an Italian ricotta cookie is, or a lemon ricotta cookie is it's really just like almost like a vanilla cookie with a little bit of simple icing on top, and then you put a little bit of sprinkles on top as well. So they're very cute and fun.
Sounds so festive for any time of year.
So I took them to a gathering at a friend's house. I think one of the most surprising things about this recipe for me was it makes 6 dozen cookies, which is a lot of cookies.
That's a lot of cookies.
It's a lot of cookies. It's really not that difficult. Everything about it is very simple. There's just butter, sugar, 1 container of ricotta cheese, like a 15-ounce container of it. You grate some lemon in. There's a little vanilla, eggs, flour, baking soda. And the icing is also very simple. It's just confectioner's sugar, powdered sugar, and you mix in a little bit of lemon juice and a little bit of milk just to thin it out, and you put that over the cookies. You sprinkle them with any color of sprinkle that you want. What I found that made this process really easy was I used a really small like meatball scoop or cookie scoop, and that made the process really easy. You can put a lot on a tray. So again, you're not spending hours in the kitchen making these cookies, but you do end up with a lot of them, and they're great for sharing.
I think having cookie recipes that make 6 dozen, even if they're small, is so nice. Oftentimes I find I need to double cookie recipes.
Yeah, and again, it doesn't actually have a lot of ingredients, like 2 sticks of butter, a container of ricotta cheese, 2 eggs. It doesn't require a lot of other stuff, but it somehow yields a lot of cookies.
And they're kind of like tender and soft.
I was really surprised by how soft and tender they are. I'm not a big sugar cookie person usually, or if I do have a sugar cookie, I want one that is described as very soft. And these were incredibly tender. I love that little bit of light lemony flavor. And I will say, if you're someone who's like ricotta cheese in a cookie, you don't at all taste the ricotta cheese. I think that's what the tenderness, it really comes from the tenderness of the cheese.
I think I remember when I made this, it is like a classic sort of cookie dough in that you do cream your butter and sugar with either a handheld mixer or a stand mixer, right?
Yes, yeah. And I think the other important step to remember or to think about if you're going to make this, if you're interested in making this recipe, is that this is a dough that needs to rest. I really didn't realize that. I got into it and I was like, oh no, I need to spend a couple of hours letting it rest. But it's a good one where you can let it rest for 2 hours or up to an entire week. And so if you have 20 minutes to make this dough and then you don't bake it off for another couple of days, what a great recipe.
Yeah, it's nice to have things that you can sort of stick in the fridge and make later and that are forgiving. I think almost any good cookie, most of them need to rest. So if you're planning to bake cookies, you kind of want to go into that mind frame with the dough probably needs to rest. There are a few that don't need to, but that's how I'm always thinking. If I'm preparing to bake cookies, and in fact, at some point you and I will rehash holiday cookies again, because I learned so much this past year from holiday cookies.
Yeah.
But one of the things that I really learned is like how much cookie dough can be made ahead of time and even frozen. I mean, I've been freezing my chocolate chip cookies for years, but almost any cookie, it seems like you can freeze the dough and then bake it off when you're ready to bake it.
Yeah, I think that's a surprising thing that I learned as well. And I think maybe it comes from, at least for me, if you're a young kid that starts getting into the kitchen, you start with the sweet thing. When I was like 8, 9, 10 years old, I was making cookie dough with my mom. And that's a very immediately gratifying experience. You make the cookie dough, you bake them, and then you barely get them out of the oven and then you're eating them. And I think as an adult and as someone who's thinking about baking for holidays or baking to go to someone's house or baking it to take to somewhere, that if you can find yourself 15 or 20 minutes to make a dough and then you let it rest, not only will you have better cookies, it's just like a little bit more stress-free.
I agree. It's a sort of, at first, the delayed gratification is hard, but
Yes.
it always pays off.
Yes, and I will say the other great thing about this recipe is they actually stay at room temperature for several days because there were so many left over. You know, we left them at our friend's house, and a few days later, their teenage daughter texted me out of the blue and was like, "What is this cookie? What did you put in it? Does it have unicorn dust in it?" Which I really loved. It was such a sweet message to get.
Well, that's why I think Sam makes it for holiday cookies, because you want a cookie that can sit on the counter for several days. So
Right.
that's also a good thing to mention about these. Carrie, this is giving me a sweet tooth.
Yes, I'm excited to go make a sweet treat in my kitchen.
Me too. Until next
All right.
time.
Until next time.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks for being our food friend.
If you enjoyed our podcast, please subscribe, leave us a review, and share this episode with friends. We love hearing from you, so follow us on Instagram or drop us a line at foodfriendspodcast.com.
Yes, we'd love to hear from you and your food friends. Happy cooking and eating.